How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? It is Wednesday. The Bulls have a game later this evening at the United Center against the Raptors. The trade deadline is nearly 2 weeks away, but more importantly, you know every Wednesday that I feature your Bulls hot takes and your would you rather scenarios. And this week, I'll be featuring your Bulls hot takes that you have either left on the channel or in the Discord, which you should absolutely join the Discord, by the way. It is free and a great place to talk about Bulls basketball with other Bulls fans. Also, a quick plug, in case you missed it, my upload from yesterday, I was incredibly fortunate to have the great Casey Johnson of NBC Sports Chicago sitting down with me and chatting about the Bulls season, the upcoming trade deadline, and we also discussed the Alex Caruso, Grayson Allen incident. Casey has always been so kind enough to meet with me to talk with everyday fans, so be sure to check it out. I'll leave it linked in the description below as well as on the end screen of this one. Also, guys, we did learn last night that Derrick Jones Jr., after already suffering his initial knee injury that sidelined him for over 2 weeks now, while working out at the Advocate Center, fractured his right index finger and will be out for, you guessed it, 6 to 8 weeks. Just brutal news for the Bulls, as this now means that Caruso, Lonzo Ball, and now Derrick Jones Jr. will all be out for at least 6 weeks. So those are some of the Bulls' best defenders. The Bulls just cannot catch a break. I know it's part of the game. You have to expect injuries, but man, this is going to be rough. A rough few weeks for the Bulls while we continue to play shorthanded. But anyway, with all that being said, let's get into your take, shall we? So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Our first take comes to us from BCubs23. If Ayo was drafted to a team where he plays starter minutes more frequently, he would have a strong case for Rookie of the Year, but I think that goes without saying. I don't know if it actually goes without saying. I mean, yes, Ayo on a bad team that was rebuilding, where he would be getting the bulk of minutes since the start of the season, would definitely enable him to put even better numbers and showcase what he can do. And I do think he would have a case for first team all rookie, but I think even with how good Ayo has been, there's simply too much competition for that award. Again, even if Ayo was getting starter level minutes on a bad team, which mind you, he has been getting starter minutes most recently and getting a lot of run for the Bulls while they've been injured, but to be on the same level as guys like Evan Mobley, Cade Cunningham, Franz Wagner, even Scotty Barnes is probably not a realistic scenario for Ayo to have a strong case for Rookie of the Year, even if he was drafted to a bad team. Don't get me wrong, I love Ayo and he's slowly becoming one of my favorite players on this team, and I think his potential is what also intrigues me the most, but I think him winning Rookie of the Year is a bit of a stretch. Next up, we've got Dean Smith. Zach is more of an impactful player than DeMar, and if we had Zach and not DeMar, we would be better than the other way around. People have been blinded by DeMar's story. Don't get me wrong, he is a big impact player as well. I disagree. I think both impact the game in different but complementary ways. Zach obviously is a much better outside shooter, and he's still all around a much quicker player with his speed over someone like DeRozan. They're also both great mid-range players, but where DeMar excels at that LaVine maybe isn't as gifted at is DeMar's ability to draw contact and get to the line, which was a huge game changer for the Bulls, being dead last season in terms of free throw attempts as a team. DeRozan has better court vision and a better floor general view anyway than LaVine does, at least in the half court. Not saying that Zach is bad at that, but DeRozan has the edge over him there. But more importantly, and last night should prove this to be the case, but DeMar is oftentimes more level-headed and has better decision-making in the clutch. Zach at times under pressure panics a bit, gets tunnel vision, which sometimes DeRozan does as well, but his overall experience and leadership shows up in late game situations. And I'm pretty sure if DeMar was in the game last night, the Bulls would not have faltered in blowing a near 30-point lead. But either way, both players are very impactful. I just don't think it's accurate to say that LaVine is more impactful than DeMar is, especially when you see the difference between their off-court and on-the-court numbers. Next, we've got BCubs1939, the original. Artis Gilmore aside, Ayo is the best draft pick the Bulls have ever made outside of the first round. And I think you added in the Discord as well that Gilmore was over pick number 100, since this was obviously back in the day when they had like 10 rounds in the NBA draft. It was kind of like what you see from the NFL draft today. And you also noted that Tony Kukoc was technically a second round pick since he was number 29 overall. And at that time, the league hadn't been expanded yet to 30 teams. So Kukoc was the first pick in the second round. But I mean, you're not far off, man. Like outside of Kukoc and Gilmore, who you just can't put Ayo over because it's way too early, maybe at some point in his career, but I feel like we can almost say with confidence that Ayo has been the Bulls' best draft pick outside of the first round. Like, you look at the track record for the Bulls and their second round picks, they're just not that good. Granted, hitting on a second round pick is always tough, but like when you're comparing him to, say, the likes of Cameron Bairstow or Jordan Bell, Paul Zipser, I will say, though, the Bulls drafted Daniel Gafford in the second round, who you guys know I do love, but even as much as I like Gafford, you can't say that he's as impactful as someone like Ayo has shown to be already in his rookie season. Next, we've got Phoenix Airblade. Zach plays too soft for how much talent he has. I've never really heard anyone call Zach soft before. I think that's a bit of a mischaracterization. Like, yes, I don't like how much Zach complains to the refs and gets frustrated and loses his way when he doesn't get calls, sure, but he's a pretty aggressive player. So much so that sometimes it actually leads to his detriment when the team might need him to be a little more, as I said earlier, level-headed in the clutch. But soft? No, I wouldn't characterize LaVine like that at all. Next, we've got Joker. DeMarcus Cousins would dominate the paint, play so much better than Vucevic. Yeah, not at all. I don't really get the obsession some Bulls fans have with DeMarcus Cousins. Like, there's a reason he hasn't been able to find himself on a team for longer than a 10-day contract. Like, it would be nice to have him off the bench in a very limited role to give us some size and strength, but really it's because the Bulls are so depleted in the front court. Otherwise, I would even go far as to say that we wouldn't need him if the Bulls had a solid front court. But come on now, to say that he would be better than Vucevic, no, just no. You know, Vucevic might be sometimes not the best when it comes to operating in the paint as much as DeMarcus Cousins would be, but he's leaps and bounds a better and more impactful player than Cousins is at this point in his career anyway. Next, we've got Chris Rodriguez. Ayo Dosunmu will develop into a better player than Lonzo. Ooh, that's a pretty bold take. I mean, it's not a completely unfair take because based on what we've seen thus far from Ayo in just his rookie season, and he's been incredibly impressive, as I talked about before. At the same time, as good as Lonzo Ball has been currently in his 5th season, the guy isn't a superstar level player or even an all-star level player at this point. Like, if you had said Ayo will develop into a better player than Zach LaVine, that would be a massive stretch when Ayo having only played all but a half season in his career. But as far as developing to be better than Lonzo, I mean, it's way too early, but there are already things that Ayo does better than Lonzo, especially as it relates to his inside scoring ability. I mean, for Lonzo, his scoring is somewhat limited to his three-point shooting, which he's gotten really good at, but his mid-range and in the paint scoring is pretty minimal. Ayo has shown to be a very capable defender, and when tasked at running the point, he's actually proven to have solid court vision as well, arguably better than Lonzo's ability to run in the half court anyway. Lonzo is a better passer when it comes to moving the ball ahead in transition. So, I mean, to be honest, it's not far off, but we also have to remember that Lonzo is only 24 and is still developing himself and could even get better just as much as Ayo can. Next, we've got strategies. Coby and Vucevic will be traded before the deadline. Vucevic, Coby, Portland's first for Sabonis and Craig. Yeah, I can't see that happening. First of all, I don't know why the Pacers would want this. Like, if the Pacers are going to be going into a full rebuild, they're not going to want Vucevic in a trade, whose trade value probably isn't the highest right now, given the fact that he's been so inconsistent so far this season. Yes, Coby and a first-round pick is nice for them when it comes to rebuilding, but they're going to want more than that for someone like Sabonis, who is an all-star currently in his prime. On top of that, I just don't see the Bulls making a big all-in move type of trade, which this trade scenario would be. And because the Bulls are suffering with injuries right now, it's highly unlikely they would move on from either Coby White or Vucevic because they're going to need their offense regardless of their inconsistencies. And obviously Sabonis would be a huge piece for the Bulls, but if you bring in Sabonis, but you're giving up Vucevic and Coby White at the same time, you now have a gap at the 5 because Tony Bradley is not a starting center in the NBA, and you're taking away a good portion of your scoring off the bench. So I don't see this trade making sense for the Bulls, nor do I think that the Pacers would even want to make it. Next, we've got Dennis. Due to injuries, Bulls fall in the standings almost like how the Lakers did and will play either the Bucks, Heat, or Nets in the first round. You know, to be honest, I know a lot of people are concerned that the Bulls are going to fall in the standings quite a bit. And yes, I do think they will slide without Caruso, Lonzo, and now obviously Derrick Jones Jr., but I really can't see them falling below the 5 or the 6 seed, because it's not like Caruso and Lonzo are going to be out for the rest of the season. And on top of that, they still have LaVine, DeRozan, and Vucevic. Like, this is still a talented enough team to where they shouldn't fall as low as the 7th or 8th seed, which would likely be the case if they were to face the Nets, Bucks, or Heat, as you mentioned. If that does end up being the case, then yeah, I mean, the Bulls are kind of in trouble, because each of those teams the Bulls do not match up well against. The Heat have been a challenge for them, especially when they play zone defense, and Bam Adebayo has always been a problem for Vucevic. And the Bucks and Nets, I mean, both of these teams are going to have their best player in the series in Kevin Durant and Giannis. They're arguably the 2 best players in the league right now. So I sure hope the Bulls don't fall that much, because I would like to see them at least win a playoff series this season. And I think the Bulls will make enough headway once they're fully healthy by March. Like, who knows? We might even have Patrick Williams back by then. Anyway, guys, I will end it there for this week. Be sure to leave your hot takes and your would you rathers in the comments below. Don't forget, the Bulls have a game later this evening. I'll have a live chat for that game, both on the channel as well as the Discord. So feel free to join that for those who would like to, and if you want to talk basketball with all of us while it's happening. Until then, guys, as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.